Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser on a Thursday morning. It feels like a Wednesday. Thursday morning, and Daffy is in the house. By the way, wifey thinks I'm crazy for having designated mugs for specific days for some reason, but nope, Thursdays are for Daffy. Good morning, everybody. Sir Z, good morning, sir. As people gather around over here, we got quite a few things to talk about this morning, actually, after really not having as much the day before. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, we weren't here this morning, like yesterday morning as well. So some news to go over. But before that, there's like a bunch of stats to go over. We'll talk a little about the PSG game. And obviously, the weekend is coming up. I'm sure the boys tonight will talk a lot about the PSG game and what they saw as well. And some of the online stuff is just crazy. I should make a note of that, so I do address it towards the end because it just like drives me nuts. People are just they're the worst, as it says in Seinfeld. Okay, let's talk about this because this is just freaking crazy, and I'm still not believing it. I know it's on the Premier League side. Poor Mateusz, the Polish prince, posted the stats on just the stats initially on Discord, and I remember like Kazi was in there too. I mean, we're like, dude, there's no way, like in like 491 games or some crazy number of games that Klopp was in charge, that he never had the same starting 11. So most use 11 only started 5 matches together. So the same starting 11 never more than 5 times. I'm still not buying that because I just remember having shows. I'm like, it has to be in a row or something like that because it's just like I remember sitting here in like pre-match shows or the day befores and stuff like that, and really we would argue over like maybe like one position. The rest of the squad kind of filled itself. I just don't. And if you look at the image, and I don't know, this is just. I mean, this is the and of all the lineups. If I asked you right during the Klopp era, I'm like, make me the starting 11, like Klopp starting 11. If I asked you to make Klopp starting 11, I don't think this is the one you're making. I really don't. First of all, Henderson isn't on there. Milner's on there as the captain, so you would definitely put Henderson in there. I mean, I would probably have if I picked a lineup. I mean, Keita is there. Did Keita play 5 games? Leave alone 5 games in a row. And like, actually, like, was the most commonly used starting 11 during the Klopp era. This really, really blows my mind. Like, this stats is just like ridiculous, and I feel like there's freaking no way that can be true. Because first of all, like I say, Keita is on here, Milner is on here, and I would never. And Gomez is on here. And I know we had that era, right, where it was like Van Dijk and Gomez, so I can see that. But if I had you make a Klopp era starting 11, like if we, 10 years from now, we're like, man, what a team that was. Remember that team? And then we make a starting 11. You would put Ali. You would put Trent Robertson, right? Goes without saying. Van Dijk goes without saying. And that's the other center back is where we had a lot of injuries. So, okay, I get that. So you throw maybe Matip in there is probably like if you told me a Klopp era, and I know we have like Lauren and Gomez and stuff like that in there, but if you told me to make a Klopp era starting 11, I'm probably putting Matip as the second center back. So you come to midfield. If I asked you again, Klopp's midfield, it would be Hendo, Fabinho, Gini. And this trio has to have started more than 5 games together. Like, there's no freaking way that midfield did not play 5 games. And if I told you the front 3, Mane, Bobby, Mo, and that lineup started a bazillion. So what is the combination that is like making this skewed? I mean, obviously, when you have Van Dijk and Ali and those guys in there, you're looking towards the latter part of Klopp era after the team was built. But after the team was built, not having started 5 matches together, and I'm assuming based on the image, and it says Klopp's 11, This is the 11, like where there's no Hendo and Keita is playing and starting. That stat just totally blows my mind. And if I wasn't a lazy person, I would go game by game and lineups and be like, "There's no way," because I feel like the lineup I just gave you guys. And when somebody first threw the stat out there, is like when Tush threw the stat out there, I was like, "Oh, it might be in a row." And that'd be very reliable. Fake news it is. Yes, I'm calling fake news on this one. But like I was like, oh, that's because Matip was always injured. Like the second center back was always changing. But it's not in a row. It's like overall. And yeah, there's no way. I'm still not believing it. I still find it extremely hard to believe that midfield that I just gave you did not have more than 5 starts. And Robo and Trent were always there. Ali's obvious. I mean, I know Ali's had a lot of injuries, but yeah, there's no freaking way. There is no freaking way, right? I mean, I can be. I mean, I know it's a shocking stat, but it doesn't even sound real. It doesn't even sound doable when you look back and think of games. But the weird thing is, you look back and think of games. Because I was thinking about this afterwards. I'm like, dude, there's no way. Like, you go back and you think of moments. Well, you look at that like Barcelona team. Well, that's not it. You look at, but isn't the Champions League winning side the starting 11 I just gave you, right? With like the midfield and stuff like that. Yeah, gotta go back and look at it. But I just, who wins between the two? Man, oh man. I think tactically, this team wins right now. But the other team is so dangerous going forward. I mean, that trio up top was so darn good. And Bobby was so freaking good. But the only thing I go back to is this current system, this current manager, the way he plays feels a lot more safer in some ways. So I think, it would take advantage of that old team a lot better. Like, it would be a lot more sound in midfield and then counter and hit that team of the Klopp era on the counter. That's a good one. It's one of those we'll never know. So everybody's like just, throwing stuff out there. But I know what you guys think. But I think, yeah, I mean, I knew because Mane is there, you would go with Mane. But yeah, Mane against Trent is a scary ordeal overall. The only thing I go back to is probably the styles, because then again you have Diaz going at Trent, so there's that, or Gakpo going at Trent. I mean, if you look comparing the starting 11s from yesterday, you going with that, and yeah, dude, there's no way. I really don't think there's any way that stat can be true, but yeah, need more research on this. I just can't believe that stat to be true. That only 5 times is the same starting 11 has played for Klopp, because this one doesn't have the stat, but I think it's in the 400s or something like that. And obviously in the beginning you had all kinds of like weird people playing. I'm looking at the last 3 to 4 seasons, and I just don't see it. I don't know why. There's no way, but you would think this on the Premier League sites. It should be like, this is like on the official site. It's not like some dude, like, because I think what he had posted was some dude tweeting, and I was like, yeah, there's no way that's made up. But this is on the Premier League's official account, so you would think that it would be accurate. It's so crazy that it's hard to believe. But well, I mean, I don't know if I want to invest. I asked BJ's help on this, our stat guy, to kind of look into, because of all things, this one being, I mean, what's more shocking, the fact that it hasn't been more than 5 times, or the fact that this is the one of all things is the most common one, because that's not the one that I would make. The one I told you guys what I would make, like Matip. You can switch Matip with like maybe Gomez in that spot, because obviously neither were liable towards the end. Even Konate, it's crazy. Even like last season of Klopp, I know there were so many injuries and stuff like that, and I don't know, we keep going back to this with like the injuries, right? Is it Is it luck? Is it training? Is it style? As the Polish prince would say, it's probably both. In terms of like it's all of them. I realize they all combine, and we talked about this before. When you have a guy injured, other guy comes in. Well, he's not used to playing that many games back to back to back, so now he's injured because he was like a bench warmer regularly that got like spot minutes and stuff like that. But we'll talk about like spot minutes and how important those are. I think when we talk a little bit about the PSG game. Here's another crazy ordeal. Same accounts, like we're kind of dominating the Premier League Instagram account after yesterday, but we have now beaten the champions of England, allegations included, City twice. We have beaten PSG, the French champion, the Spanish champion, the German champion, and we have not conceded a goal in those 5 games. That is a crazy stat. Having said that, you look at yesterday and it's more like a miracle than like the other games. Real, I mean, they missed a penalty, right? We say the penalty. Leverkusen, I mean, that was, I thought, was like probably one of the most comfortable wins of the season somehow. But City, the same way, it felt like we could play another game and we could win it again 2-0. So that was, but yesterday, I mean, I don't know if you play that game again, can Ali do what he did as well as he did? I mean, he's the world's best. I think he proved it once again. I know there's always going to be a debate because, different leagues and all that kind of stuff with like Courtois and stuff. I mean, heck, after the Champions League game, that final where he stood on his head, everybody probably said Courtois is the best goalkeeper. So he's definitely in the conversation. And yesterday he proved why he's in that conversation. And we have had a lot of talks, right, about like next season, who's going to be the goalie and stuff like that. And I do feel like still games like this is exactly why somebody will come knocking from the Saudis this summer, kind of like they did with Ederson last summer. So it will be interesting to see what happens. But maybe we'll be like, hey, how about this Georgian guy we have? And then, sell the guy we got for 30, for 60, and make a smooth 30 and move on too. But I don't know. It just feels like, I know his injury history and the fact that you can't rely on him for the entire season, which is kind of like rare for goalies, really. Like goalies, you can usually rely more. And yesterday was just amazing. That was just amazing. I mean, that game yesterday had no business being a 1-0 game. 0-0 would be a lucky one. But those guys, I mean, going back to when we talk about the bench, this is what I want to talk about. You bring those guys in, and I thought every single person who came in had like such a positive impact on the game. Nunez, Jones was amazing. I think if Elliott doesn't score the goal, we're probably talking a lot more about Jones, because I thought Jones was so good yesterday. In terms of being able to hold the ball, it was exactly what we needed. He gave us exactly what we needed out of that midfield that we did not get for, I don't know, like 70, 75 minutes or so. And he came in, I think he came in like 67 or something, I think, or somewhere around there. And like he gave it to us like that on the end of the game. And I think if the second half didn't look as bad as the first half, Slot did talk about like changing some things defensively at halftime, especially like involving Diaz and stuff like that. But I think, moving on in the game, the biggest difference was more about like those guys coming off the bench and making an impact. I think Nunez was a lot better option if we're not going to be able to build play because of midfield. It was a better option up top because I thought he was like really physical. You see what he did before the goal. They really struggled handling him after maybe being used to handling Jota. And I think that's why it's like when you have a sub, I would rather have a sub that's a different style as opposed to a like for like, because you take Jota out and you kind of, as a defender, you kind of used to defending Jota. And now you have Nunez, who's a totally different animal. And you're like, you could tell they struggled more with Nunez's physicality and stuff like that and handling that after dealing with Jota earlier in the game for like 60, 65 minutes. So he was excellent. Elliott comes in, first touch is a goal. I don't even know if he had any other touches. I know towards the end we were trying to keep the ball and move it around, and he was involved in that. But I mean, for him to come in, yeah, I mean, we were going long all game and we had like no option. I mean, Mo can kind of like do some hold up play, even though he does not, he's not built for it, if you will. But that's what makes Mo special. He can do so. I mean, he was having a horrific day, probably the worst. We've had some games with Mo where like he's not doing anything and stuff like that. I mean, he was just bad yesterday. Like Mendes had him in his pocket, first of all. And then even after, like there was like that sequence where like he literally controlled the ball out of bounds that was coming to him on the ground very comfortably. I mean, you could kind of tell. And you look at him, that's why I would not want to be Southampton. I would not want to be PSG in the second game, because you look at Mo after he comes out on the sideline, he is freaking mad. And he is not mad at like when he knows exactly why he came out, and he's not mad at the fact that he did come out. He looks mad at a guy who's mad at himself more than anything else. So I would not want to be Southampton this weekend, because Mo is going to be trotted out there, and he's going to be probably vicious against Southampton. But hopefully he'll save a little bit for the second leg against PSG, and I know he will, because he's that kind of a dude. He's going to come out and make a point against Mendes, I think. But the second one would be great. Aaron says, how on earth we won last night? Yeah, I mean, that's one of those. And man, like if you're on the other side of things, and we've all been there, I think. But like especially like in the club era, right? Like there were a lot of games like in the recent history where you were just constantly going at it, missing all kinds of stuff, goalie standing on his head, and then we give up a stupid counter or something like that. But yeah, and you know how heartbreaking it is. But this, for PSG, you have to bear in mind, this is kind of like, these are their bigger games. Once you put the league in your pocket, I mean, think about, PSG, think about 5 weeks from now. Hopefully, we'll be like, it'll be mathematically guaranteed, or it'll be almost like, 99.5% guaranteed for the title and stuff. And we'll have nothing but Champions League to kind of go at. The League Cup will be over. That's kind of like PSG on a regular basis, it feels like. Because the league is always in hand, usually, unless Pochettino is the coach. The league is always on hand. So, like, this is their main thing. So, it's even more devastating, I think, when you kind of like wait, and then go to it, and you're like, oh, and you kind of, I mean, and they played great, man. I mean, they were really, really good. I know we always, look at ourselves, which we should, I guess, but, we say, oh, we played so bad. But, well, you got to give them some credit on that as well. They did not let us come out. And a lot of those poor passes are, 1, tired legs, 2, panicky legs, and 3, like, desperate legs making passes. And I think that's why we never could build play in that. Yeah, I mean, the midfield yesterday looked horrific as well. I mean, really, you look around yesterday. Take the bench coming in, those guys out. You look at the starting 11 performances yesterday. Ali, and I really thought the back four did decent, knowing what was in front of them. I thought the back four did decent. So, Trent, I thought that was one of Trent's best games defensively. I know he had a lot of help, but there were times where he was isolated and he still won his duel and he tracked back. There were times where he was beat, but then he tracked back to kind of like get the ball again and stuff like that. But in the long, I mean, you kind of saw, Van Dijk was Van Dijk. He did make one mistake, like the one that's 1v1. I don't know where he's going. I know he's trying to draw the guy offside, but why are you running towards this? Like he was running more towards his regular spots. And maybe he didn't see the guy there. Yeah, it was like very confusing, that one. But when they did fine, and obviously Robertson did fine. But yeah, tired legs. No, I mean tired legs during the game. I mean, there's something to be said. I mean, it's not like you rest 1 week and then you can run for like 3 weeks. It doesn't work like that. I mean, within a game, there are times you could kind of tell they were tired legs, and tired legs come from like tired minds. And when you're constantly like defending the way I mean, here's the thing: we defended against City, but able to keep everything in front. I think the biggest difference is, against City, they had Doku, and that was it, right? They gave to Doku. That was the only time they created danger. They had one guy who could go at our guy who's not defending, who's not good at defending. And they were having, that's the only joy they were having. So we were like, okay, you go at that guy, we'll block the cross, and nothing is going to come out of that. With PSG, they had guys on both sides and in the middle who have speed and can beat you 1v1. And that's very hard to defend because they can isolate the left, they can isolate the right. And you now, like, which one do you defend? You get more compact. The guys in the middle who were really compact last, when we played against City, for example, And I do feel like I remember like in the Monday Night Podcast, Gallo was saying, "Oh, maybe we'll play how we play against City," and we did towards the end, and that was a bit more successful because then you had that four in the middle, a bit more compact in front of the defensive line. Before, because they can go to both wings and they have speed on both wings. Well, you're really stretching out like Mack and Gravenberg was horrific yesterday as well. So it did not really help. So you're running these guys. There's a lot of mental fatigue that goes into that translates into I think like tired legs, so they did a lot of running. That's why it'll be interesting to see what happens on Saturday, because that was a tiring game. That was a lot more tiring game. Defending is always more tiring. I know people think the opposite, but if you were a defender, you'll know that if you're under pressure, you're a lot more exhausted because it's mentally very tiring. You have to be alert at all times. Whereas as a defender, and I was a sweeper, so I'm the last guy. So if you're a center back, if you're the last guys, when you have the ball, that's when you can rest. I mean, there are times where we rest within the game, right? We move the ball around and stuff like that. But what's more important is you're mentally resting. Your brain is coming back to normal levels and you're kind of like resting your mind. Otherwise, as a defender, if you're under pressure all the time and the other team has the ball, that's a lot of mental fatigue because you're constantly chasing runners, you're constantly watching stuff. So that adds up. And that's why, there are a lot of times where teams concede one and then you kind of get a lot more, or towards the end of the game, you're finding like open spots that you didn't before. That's not because you finally figured it out. Sometimes that's because the other side is tired now, like mentally tired to be able to keep up with the game. And that's why you're creating those situations. So it was a very tiring game overall for Liverpool yesterday. So how he goes about, I mean, having seen some of the performances of the players that came off the bench, and knowing that we're playing Southampton, I can see him making some changes and almost like maybe rolling the dice against Southampton a little bit and keeping these guys on the bench. So you do have them on the bench to come in. But maybe, resting Gravenberg and putting Endo out there and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see what he does against Southampton. I hate to look at the Southampton game like we're playing Plymouth because we know what happened against Plymouth. So you can't like look past the opponent. Doesn't matter who it is. I think you like win. You make it 16 points before Arsenal plays United away. So, but you can't take it for granted. I know everybody's, maybe before this game, especially the form we were in with the City game, Newcastle game, everybody was probably talking about, like, oh, I know that's what's going to happen when we start doing projections over here. I mean, and, people doing their guesses for scoreline. It's going to be like 4-0, 5-1 and stuff like that. And those games scare me the most, so he knows. So that's definitely what I don't want going into this game. I'm looking because it does look like a bad, and it's your only league game in March. You can't kind of make up for it afterwards. So it's going to be interesting what he does in terms of the starting 11. Yeah. Apollo Creed versus Drago. Did Drago only punch him once? I thought Drago punched the hell out of Apollo in that one. You will die. More nervy about Saturday game than yesterday's. Yeah, I think because we're kind of figuring that's in hand, and that makes me more nervous now because if that slips somehow, that would be a lot more devastating. Like you take basically almost like the PSG game yesterday. If we lose the Premier League title after this point, it will be like what happened to PSG yesterday, spread to a whole year kind of a thing, and it will be like extremely devastating. So I think nerves come from that. I'm kind of similar, like not nervy, like what are we gonna do? But I feel like it's a dangerous game in terms of it can be looked past very easily, and it should not be. Ultimately, it's still. I mean, you can argue they're more like a championship side than a Premier League side, but ultimately they're still a Premier League side. They do have players who can hurt you. They have nothing to lose. I think sometimes that can be dangerous in a team. But at the same time, they're pretty fragile. So you get an early goal and stuff like that, and you can make life really easy on yourself and, sleepwalk into a 3-0, like a victory kind of a deal. But you got to get that first goal and stuff like that. In some ways, this performance from yesterday, I think helps because I would be more worried in some ways if we played really great yesterday and won 1-0, because they'd be like, oh, they're rolling. Southampton should be cake, and then we'll keep rolling kind of a deal. I think yesterday was great, where you need some games every season. You need 2-3 games to kind of slap you back into reality and wake you up from your dream, right? Like everything is going so smooth. We're winning everything. Woo, easy kind of a deal. You need a slap every once in a while. And I think, it's important that when you take that slap, it's not a devastating ordeal. I mean, you could argue that Plymouth game was a slap in some ways. The Forest loss at home comes to mind. So you need games like that throughout the year to keep the team a bit more grounded. Be humble, as Holland would say. But I think yesterday's game is one of those games, and it's very important and slash lucky slash signs of a champion when you actually still win while you take that slap, because you're that good. But you learn lessons from it as well. I think that was why yesterday's game was important in that sense, because that could have been a slap where you lost 3-0 and came back and tried to do Barcelona all over again. But now I think you took the slap to realize like what you have to do, that you have to do it well every game. Otherwise, you can be average if you do not perform, but still was able to win. So you still came back with the great result. And that, the big question will be how we play at Anfield. Like, will it be the same thing? Will they come to Anfield and dominate possession and stuff like that again? I don't see it, but that's the bigger test, I think. And I think that the team will take it a lot more personally the second leg, and you'll see a different team. But I think it will also translate. I think there's a couple of players like Mo, where it will translate into this weekend, because Mo's starting against Southampton, and it will translate into their play. I think they will be looking for revenge out of sight. That's why when I was watching, I was like, man, I would not want to be Southampton as like Mo was coming out, because you could see in his face that he's gonna want to take it out on somebody, and most likely it's gonna end up being Southampton. So, but yeah, huge win at the end of the day. They never saw it coming. I think we would have all kind of like taken the tie 0-0 and run away with it. Kind of like we were at the 40th minute. We were like just get to halftime. And I think second half started a bit better. And you were like, oh, maybe we'll even things out. Then it went back to the default settings of the first half. But I think we would have all taken a 0-0 back to Anfield. Even before the game started, we were talking about it. Like a draw away at Paris is not bad, kind of an ordeal, because we trust in Anfield and how we do at home. But yeah, winning away over there is, especially in the manner we did, is just shocking. But hey, signs of a great team. You got to kind of like celebrate that. I know a lot of like, you go to social media, everybody, or I just don't understand how people can be so up and down. I mean, it's just, yeah, you know what? That's not a bad point, to be honest with you. I mean, especially the game was going, not before the game, I think, but the way the game was going, that would have been a win. It's like a weird kind of way. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like I see online of people like going up and down with the performances. I mean, this team just had 2-3 great performances back to back to back. So like suddenly they're not good again. I just don't understand how people can live that much of a up and down. I can understand mid-game in the heat of the game, but I just can't understand afterwards. Like, yeah, it just like draws my mind. And then the other one I love is any and every way not to give Slot credit, because giving Slot any kind of credits would mean giving FSG some credits. So the FSG out crew was out and about, especially when that stat came in. Like, oh, well, this is still ultimately, I saw, look at the comments on the Instagram post I shared from the Premier League, and people are like, Slot doesn't have an 11, this is still Klopp's 11 and stuff like that. And if you can't see the differences between how these teams play, well, you don't know what the hell you're watching anyway. Basically, that's what it boils down to. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I know what you mean in terms of parallels. This was like a really good team though, and we kind of like lost that's more of like that was the opening game or something like that, right? And that's the World Cup opener is always like a what the hell kind of a game, because I don't know if it's the nerves, I don't know if it's like, and not to mention there's a lot of games in those group stages people take it easy, and I think we knew this was going to be a tough game. I don't know if they didn't expect it to be as tough. I mean, that midfield really dominated our midfield. That's why I'm really eager to see the second leg to see if that happens again, because we could not get close to the ball. So either he will do one more midfielder, but I like at Anfield, but I just don't know if he does. Really depends on if Gakpo is going to be available. I think if Gakpo is out there, I think Diaz comes to the middle and we play like that. But if Diaz is not available, I don't know if he trusts Jota in there again and would rather have Jones in there. And, we go back to similar. But that does mean that you are kind of giving away possession. But I know there's no away goals and all that kind of stuff. We talked about it in the post match yesterday. Tom was asking about it in the comments. But in terms of you score one at home against PSG and they will get they'll be broken. You'll break them. I think that's the kind of game that it will be. So it's just a matter of you can't go out there to protect a 1-0. You go out there to control the game and then whatever that brings, because that will usually bring us. First of all, you also saw yesterday that as PSG gets more and more desperate, first of all, they do things that are out of character. And then, they were taking some like crazy shots towards the end, like skying a bunch of stuff. So like when you look at 27 shots, a lot, like some of those were just like desperation shots. They're like, let me crank one from here kind of shots. So, but I think you saw from PSG at the same time that as they got more and more desperate, they became more and more vulnerable. Right before we scored that goal, there's another opportunity where if Mo can connect on that pass in front of Diaz, he's probably gone with it. But so it was coming. They were getting more and more desperate, and the back was getting more and more open. Hakimi pushes up more and more and stuff like that. So if you can get every minute that passes, they will be more desperate. If you control a game in midfields the way we normally like to, I think, then you let PSG kind of play into your hands. Either they attack uncontrollably, you attack them, and then once you score one, I think they will be broken. But before we get to that, before we start planning for that, got to plan for Saturday against Southampton. Thank God it's not a Sunday game, by the way, so that if you do not know, now you do, that we are springing forward on Saturday. So we're taking the hours an hour forward. Whenever that happens, first thing I look is there a game Sunday morning? Because that means it's going to be pretty miserable if it was like a 6:30 game on a Sunday morning or something crazy like that. But nope, there's nothing. It's on the game is on Saturday. So yeah, the Saturday thing is first. Let's get to that, see what happens, and then I'm really interested to see how he reacts to this, how the team reacts to this. I expect a really positive reaction. That's why, like, I'm twice as happy that we won, because you took the slap, you won, and now you having taken the slap, it's going to really trigger another big run, and it will be a great time for that. Beat Southampton, eliminate PSG, go get the League Cup, international break, and then come back and finish off the Premier League as you get ready for the next stage of Champions League. So it doesn't get any better than this. So it's, I mean, yeah, you wake up this morning, you were like, there's a relief, right, from the game yesterday, but at the same time, man, it's like somehow everything is going Liverpool kind of a deal. So, but tune in tonight, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. The quads, I think all four will be on there tonight. I'm sure they'll talk about the game and a lot other like miscellaneous stuff that they always do. So do tune in for that. Tonight, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. Yes, major relief is right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I woke up with kind of like that. We're like, whoo, that was good. I'm building up the stress right now because Fenerbahce plays in 2 hours against Rangers, actually. So, and they're missing a few people because of yellow cards and stuff. So I'm building a new kind of level of pressure for myself there. But yeah, do tune in for that, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. And then I'll be back tomorrow morning, and I will probably focus a lot more about the Southampton game. and then so that we leave the Champions League matchup once we get the 3 points from Southampton. But hit that like, hit that thumbs up if you are here watching us live, and go grab a friend. There's a lot coming up. We're going to be using the international break to kind of like finalize everything before we roll it out to everybody who follows us and supports us and stuff like that. But there's also some like new content coming on and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot in the works. So thanks as always. Do share as much as you can, because really, since we don't do a lot of clickbait stuff, we rely on word of mouth to get us around. So grab a friend, drag them by the ear, and say, go watch these guys, go subscribe and follow and stuff like that. And then once they come here, we'll get them hooked. Don't worry. But have a great day, everybody. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.